is NUS1. And in closing opposition is SMU1. In a motion that reads, a scientist has found irrefutable evidence that God exists. This God does not belong to a religion or belief system that exists on earth. This God acts randomly without any regard for human suffering, and then assuming this evidence will never be found out otherwise. This House believes that scientists should disclose this evidence to the world. It's a very exciting motion. Please give one more round of applause for everyone today. Without further ado, Prime Minister, please. Here.
Hello? Hello? Yeah. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a reason that Karl Marx called religion the opium of the masses. For years and years, it has been a tool of oppressors to shut down the poor. Hell, even colonists use it to tell people not to rebel against them. Wars have been waged in the name of Allah, in the name of God. What would we rather happen in this debate? We think that if you're a scientist who discovers this evidence, you'd release it to the public. So the motion says it is irrefutable evidence, meaning everyone is going to understand that God is a dick, that they don't care about human suffering, that they act completely randomly, that there's just no stake in your life that God ever cares about. What do we think will happen? We think that this means, naturally, people are going to just move away from religious institutions because there's no proof for them to back up whatever it is that they're saying. In fact, that the counter is true. Whatever that they're saying, whatever Muslims say, Christians say, are a total lie. And we think that they're likely to change their beliefs for the better. What am I going to tell you in my speech? First, I'm going to tell you why religion has been the cause of the worst oppression that humanity has seen. But second, I'm going to tell you, especially for poor individuals, how religion continuously oppresses them. So first, you have to look at how religion begets an absolute good that is absolutely unquestionable. You cannot say that sacred scripture, what the Bible says, is wrong because this came directly from God. You cannot say that the Quran is wrong because this is the word of Allah as professed by the Prophet. What does that mean? I think you have to look at what these actual scriptures are, what religion actually teaches. Because we think it leads to horrible, horrible oppression. So first, it's inherently seeing people who don't believe in your religion as others, seeing them as an infidel, thinking that they are going to hell and you have to do something to save them. Why is that bad? If you look at things like the Crusades, right? If you look at things like jihad in the Middle East, that this is exactly what emboldens these individuals to act, right? Because they have that moral duty from God, that absolute good that tells them they have to do this. But it also means that these are the most traditional types of things that are never changed by things like logic, like things like reason. So things like LGBT individuals deserving rights will never be okay with the Catholic Church because marriage is only for men and women. But thirdly, we think that within religions, right, because historically these things have come up out of patriarchal societies, like for example, Islam in the Middle East, or things like Catholicism in Europe, which is incredibly like white and incredibly male-centric. It means that a lot of times, people like women, for example, are always getting the worst of scenarios. Things like in Islam, in the worst forms of Islam, for example, are just in general them seeing women as less than men, them forcing women to have to be conservative because that's what the Quran says. What do we do under our side of the house? We think that we remove these harmful ideologies because people have now no reason to believe in them. It gives them room to be able able to understand things like reason, things like logic, it makes it easier for people to believe that, hey, maybe moral dignity across all individuals is something believable. Because there's no reason you are different from a Muslim or a Christian. There's no reason a woman or a gay individual should be beneath you. So on to the second argument about poor individuals and how they're worse off. No, thank you. So we think that religion has just historically been a tool to constantly oppress the poor. And this is where Karl Marx was coming from. Why is that the case? You have multiple levels of analysis. So first, we think that because it makes people complacent with their suffering. This looks like, for example, you as a poor individual being okay with your poverty because God has a plan for you. Because there's heaven and the afterlife, there's Jannah, for example, for you to be able to go to after you die. So your life on earth here isn't that important. It is them explicitly saying, blessed are the poor for they shall inherit the earth and all these types of things, meaning that suffering is something that is to be proud of and to be accepted into your life. So we think that it just makes you a lot more complacent about your situation. It means that it's less likely for you to, even if you are suffering from poverty, even if you are upset at the poverty you face, you are just going to accept that poverty, accept that you are upset because God has something better, because God said that this is something okay. So it's much easier for oppressors to continuously push down harmful policies against you, like companies lowering your wages and all these types of things. You don't see a necessity to make a labor union, for example, because their suffering is something noble. This is incredibly important because a lot of the poorest individuals are the ones who are most susceptible to religion, right? Because they have nothing else in their life except for this idea of God and the solace that they get from Mass, for example. But why is it worse off for them? Second, we think that they lose out in terms of money, right? Because a lot of the times, most organized religions in the world require you to give your income, require you to donate to the church, like giving zakat, for example, if you are Muslim. Or for example, like how the thingy in Mass is passed in everyone around you during Mass time. Why is this something important? So especially if you take a look at how those who believe this religion the most are the more give most of their money to this religion, it means that they lose out in terms of the income they have. That means that they can't buy food, for example, for the day. Why is this so harmful? Because they're going to say they give these donations to the poor in the first place. But a lot of the religious charities are incredibly misinformed. They buy Bibles and rosaries and the Quran, for example, instead of buying food and medicine. So we don't think that that money goes anywhere great. But thirdly, we think that you lose a lot of your time following religious doctrine. Things, for example, like going to Mass or praying 5 times a day is incredibly harmful if you are a poor individual your time is your money, right? You are paid by the hour, you are paid every single time you go to work, you show up at the factory. So we think that as a poor individual, you lose out in terms not only of the money that you already have, but in the total amount of money that you are able to make. Why is this better coming from our side of the house? We think on our side of the house 2 things. First, you are aware that this is the only life you have. So you're going to be more likely to want to fight to have a better life for yourself. But second, we think that you are aware that this is you are the only person that you can count on. God is a great, there are no miracles for you to be able to help you out. For all those reasons, proud to propose. Thanks.
Pero itu yang argumental menjaga diskusi tadi kita diskus sama ya kenapa sudah menjadi Indonesia
Short. Opening the case properly and legal policy.
Before I start the timer, I just really want to thank everyone who's been really supportive of Solbridge. I think it really takes a child to be raised by a village, but I think I've been, wait, that doesn't make sense, but I think out of everything, I'm standing here with Leomar because of everyone who's been supportive and progressive to all the changes. I think that in the future, we should make a more holistic-based society that would be better for EFL and NEA speakers. Let's start. which you claim that the intentions of God are unknown, the intentions of God are unaware of. Which means that precisely, government side would still live in a world in which you would have disassociated individuals with a lack of organized religion who would still have beliefs and claims that afterlife does exist. And that's why we would say that even with the worst versions of opening government side, that religious organizations are terrible, we think that there are the best methods and metrics in which individuals shape the meaning of their lives and shape the way in which they find hope in suffering and hope in methods in which they cannot find answers to in a world where even science does not have enough evidence for these things. The second thing I would like to clarify is that government side should not just claim that scientists should always disclose information simply because they're scientists. We think that scientists and the scientific community has to work with discretions based on its consequences anyway. Either they tell us the responsibility as to why the scientific community will gain some benefits, or what exactly are the ethical standards. We do not think that there are clear benefits as to how you are going to benefit the lives of these individuals, granted that we think that religious believers and religions are one of the most centric parts of individuals in the way they value consequences and the motivations in which they shape their decisions in their lives. What are the problems of government side, right? First, you have to note that believers in this sense would find immense betrayal. It is not that organized religion will just disperse in one day. We think that there's a gradual step-by-step process in which individuals would have to formulate their own experiences and understand as to how they would now shift their viewpoints with the change in information that this God no longer has clear intention. The second thing also means that individuals are likely to find different bits and pieces of random coincidence in their lives and find some hope even on government side to claim that this is a random coincidence that was best intended by their God, which means that all of your harms will exist on the government side, but with a lack of organized religion, you're unable to have accountability to claim these pastors and religious leaders to say how exactly were your intentions and how exactly were your consequences framed. But the last thing to tell you is that we think that there are benefits to things like karma, the understanding of afterlife, the understanding of God rewards you and punishes you when you do bad and good things, the ability in which individuals, despite all the suffering in their lives, find some hope in the miracles of their lives. And we think that this is important because with individuals and subjective experiences in our lives, we just cannot find the answer to everything. And we think that if religion is one that finds comfort for these individuals, we think that that is one that is beneficial. Direct response as to why opening government is out of this debate. Notice that the worst versions and characterization of organized religion would only work if they claim that this is something that happened from 50 years ago. Notice that organized religion works in different subsets simply because they know that there are different interpretations to how individuals want to claim and see their gods anyway. But we think that the benefit with this is that you're able to find collectivized individuals with similar traits as to how their experiences and how their consequences are likely to be framed by the subsets of religion. For instance, we no longer have just the Vatican Catholic Church because we realize that even if we have the same version of God, individuals would like to tie better to Protestant God, the New Testament God anyway. But then the second thing we believe is that just because organized religion is gone does not necessarily mean that all of your patriarchal society and sexist narratives are removed. For instance, we think that even claims when God tells you that you have to love everyone are one binding factor for extreme sexist and patriarchal individuals to claim that you have to give some marginal benefits and some value to individuals who may be different than you. So if you still have a patriarchal society on the government side and have extremely sexist cultural practices that claim that women should be mothers and caretakers, we don't necessarily believe that there are benefits to government side to motivate different individuals to claim that you have to do good, you have to care about your neighbors. But then lastly, the claim that they say is that there is an internalization of suffering by individuals. But what they did not remember is that the concept of afterlife, that God has intentions in the way in which you make your experiences, is based on a reward punishment system, which we think is good, right? Because the more good things that you do, you believe that God has the intention of rewarding you, that even if you may not have all the benefits today, maybe some point in your life, in your afterlife, you may go to heaven. Well, you will say, but how about the poor people? Firstly, we think that it's a balance that you're able to have in which organized religion has the biggest claim and narrative of doing altruistic things because they believe that you must help other individuals, because they believe that you must have as many people to come in your church anyway. But then the second thing they would claim to you is that even in the worst case, you're unlikely to find some comfort for these individuals who are unable to change the structural barriers of their lives and say that you must internalize the suffering because too bad God said, oh well, randomly you should just go to hell or you should just die in poverty. We think that is the worst off narrative that we would claim to individuals. The first thing I would then like to do in my constructive is characterize to you what potentially this religious belief means. We think that individuals who are religious find a belief in religion simply because they believe that the current realities are unexplainable to them. We think that these are things like the meaning of life. Why do I feel this way? What makes me happy? I don't really like my boyfriend. Maybe God has a better boyfriend for me. I really don't have, right? But then the second thing I would also think is also from things like the lack of scientific evidence, and it's also from the play of the biggest fears of individuals. Things like afterlife, things like what happens after death. Why did my mom and why did my dad pass away? We think that these are unanswered things that individuals would like to find some comfort with. Then why is it important that individuals find some order through this religious organization? Firstly, notice that more religions that have survived based on forming communities, and they feel some comfort by ensuring that they are accommodated by organized religions are always there to back them up. But then the second point we would tell you is that these religious beliefs is also the simple and the easiest way in which individuals find shared identities and commonalities. For instance, you would still have things like physical markers, geographic differences, and politics that would play in the differences of individuals, but we think that religion allows some ability for individuals to shift their beliefs and say, maybe I have commonalities with people who are still significantly different from me. The second thing then I would like to tell you is how do we still then allow some checks and balances? We think the reason why we have an ambiguous God is good is not only for subset and diversity of these religious organizations, but also because they have a huge incentive to make sure that their God has a good reputation and the best reputation as much as possible. So you don't want to associate themselves with radical and extreme religious beliefs, and that's why they want to have more supporters and as many believers as much as possible. This means that this drives them to make sure that personalized versions of their God and their organized religions are based on comfort, are based on incentivizing individuals to do good, because they believe that this is what allows progressive societies, and this is also what allows them to be more relevant in the realistic world. But the last thing I would then like to thank you is that on the government side, even taking them at their best, and this religious organization dying out is good, you would say that there's a huge cognitive distance of these individuals, knowing that there are still many things that they're unable to answer to. What this means is that your individuals are likely to still have weird versions of how they want to find God, which means that no one's likely there to support them, no one's likely there to find some commonalities and conversations, which means that you're likely to drive out the most minority of your individuals who are in suffering, who are unable to get the help, because you do not have a structure that allows you to have some simple backing with the organized religion. We think that God is good simply because He is organized, simply because we have some identity that we would like to claim that is good for us. Very proud to oppose things.
We thank to speak for the leader of opposition. Continuing with proposition 6, we invite Deputy Provost please.
Checking puja. Sadar cukup manusia begitu tadi. Sadar cukup manusia. Gimana cepat untuk melakukan mulai discussion. Dia recognize right? Corner minute pada sakit kipas untuk IML. Jadi please mau ke corner untuk corner ini sakit.
Hello, is this okay? Okay. We think that the previous speaker failed to imagine the world that we would live in our side of the house. Because they said they would still try to find meaning through other ways. They still try to find random solutions and try to converge the randomness and say that it came from God and all of these things. But the very fact is the motion says you found a God that acts completely randomly. It has no intention in the randomness. There's nothing there for them to try to discern and try to fight for. So that doesn't really make sense. And in fact, there's actually a part of the motion slide that isn't in the screen that says everyone who's told about this immediately believes it. Which means that everyone will immediately believe this. There will be no counter-religious, no counter things. It's just something I need to clarify because this isn't a motion they gave to us. It wasn't in the screen. We think the counter to this, the fact that people don't have answers to a lot of the questions that exist within society today, means that they're going to have to fall back on more realistic and a lot better alternatives to answer the questions that they have within society today. This will be my substantive case. Because the alternative to having religion answer your questions and all these things, if you can no longer trust religion, no longer trust ideological belief systems, means you fall back on science. Means you fall back on facts, logic, and things that are much more beneficial for human beings, much more beneficial for everyone in this society moving forward. So given that, I'm going to be going to that argument later on. So first, let's like talk about the way that they try to respond to our arguments. Because you have to recognize, the responses to our arguments were in no way thematic responses to the argumentation that they were giving. She picked and chose like different layers of analysis without actually understanding or rebutting the whole argumentation that we were actually giving. So for example, when we said that you oppress poorer individuals and you keep them down on the lower levels of all these societies, there was no proper response to the other levels that we were talking about how a lot of these individuals have to give a huge amount of money to these religions because of things like zakat, because of things like tithe, and because religions tell them, you need to do this to go to heaven, you need to do this to be part of our community, which she says is inclusive, which really isn't in a lot of these cases. For more than this, the things that you have to give time to these religions, that you always have to go to mass, that you have to pray 5 times a day, that you have to volunteer in your church, you have to do all of these things, is money directly away from a lot of these impoverished individuals that where their money is their time, their money is their way to be able to move forward. So the point at which she's unable to respond to those cases, it's still largely oppressive towards the poor. She didn't really respond to the arguments and the conclusions and the impacts that the previous speaker was able to bring about. But what are the ways in which she tried to respond to these things? Please do that. She said, you have a patriarchal society, the society will still remain patriarchal. We think it's all about extent, right? To some extent, there will still be patriarchal individuals, there will still be patriarchal structures. But we're saying is to remove an entire structure that allows for the patriarchy to exist in our society today. Because religion largely leads to the structures of inequality, largely leads to a patriarchal society. So often, justification for patriarchal society, for like inequality that exists within society, is religious. If you look at the most patriarchal societies, like in Saudi Arabia, where women are only recently allowed to drive, where women need permission from their husbands to be able to go out, to be able to hang out with other individuals, where women are largely discriminated against for trying to work in their life, for trying to hang out with lots of these different individuals. The justification is religion. If you look at it historically, in terms of like in terms of Christian religion, right? The reason that people believe that women should be in the household is because Mary didn't have a job, because Mary was in the household. So a lot of the justification for religious like discrimination, and a lot of these things comes from religion. So even if we don't remove the patriarchal system regardless, that was never a conclusion. We help solve the patriarchy by removing some structures that lead to patriarchal institutions. It's marginally better off for people who are discriminated in these societies. But even if she never responded to the bulk of the analysis on this case, because it was never just about the patriarchy, right? We told you, in a lot of cases, this religious discrimination leads to a huge amount of discrepancies, huge discriminations for a lot of individuals on the ground, regardless of the patriarchy. When Hindu nationalist leaders rise up to power in India, that's discrimination against a lot of the Muslims that exist within their society today. That this allows this justification for Modi to say that these people should go to internment camps. That's justification for Modi to say that these people shouldn't get jobs, shouldn't be part of our society. It is the same with China, right? Where they discriminate against religions, and they get a lot of the harms that exist from these societies. So a lot of the conclusions and impacts that came from our previous speaker was only given the illusion of analysis as a response, was never truly analyzed on their side. Listen, let's respond to the case that came from the previous speaker. She said, organized religion works in different subsets, and this is good because people come together and all these things. We think, firstly, the fact that organized religion works in different subsets leads to a lot of harms, right? The fact that there are different subsets leads to a lot of conflicts because everyone believes that they're the truth. Everyone believes that they have absolute right for their God, and what they're talking about is the word of God. And what are conflicts that is in history between the Crusades, but even right now, so the Sunni-Shia conflicts that exist, the large discrepancy, the large Cold War that is occurring within the Middle East, where Iran is fighting Saudi Arabia, and having lots of proxy wars against lots of each other, comes from the idea that they are from different subsets of religion, and they think that the other Sunni or Shia religion is wrong, and that they're the ones that need to proliferate within the society today. So it doesn't actually bring people together. In fact, it makes people fight more in a lot of these cases. What is the alternative world that we give you on our side? Because if you have no absolute truth, you have no absolute necessity, you have to fall back on things like science. You have to fall back on basic logic and understanding all these things. I mean, it's so much more likely that you're going to be able to see other people as human beings. It's so much more likely you're going to be able to see things for the way that they are. And this is exactly where my case will come in this debate. Before I move on, closing. Do you have anything?
Like on your side, do you think that this new religion can become collectivized and formalized structures?
No, we don't think it will be collectivized in a formalized structure. That's exactly the point. The fact that the God is random and the God doesn't care about you as a human being means that you aren't likely to worship this God because the God gives no fucks about you and the God isn't going to help you. It's completely random. There's no meaning in all the randomness and things that occur within the world today. Meaning, given that there's no more religious structure, there's no more huge religious institution, that's where my argument comes in. Because it's about why scientists should release the information where this is better off. The previous speaker challenged us. She said, we need to give a reason for why the scientists should release the information. We don't think this is true. We think, firstly, the scientists should principally release the information because that's what a scientist is supposed to do. Scientists were brought up and are able to get all their knowledge through the work of previous scientists in the past. The only reason that they're able to know what they know now is because of a lot of scientists, a lot of sacrifice that occurred throughout human history. We think given this, you as a scientist, this being your profession, means that you principally need to release this information to give back to the body of knowledge that allowed you to become who you are, to become the professional individual that you want to be. This is principle, this is irrespective of outcomes. But let's bite what the previous speaker tried to preempt from this. Even if it's about outcomes, we think this gives you a lot better outcomes in these situations. Because firstly, the fact that you'll no longer have unquestionable things means that people will turn to science to get answers. If you no longer have religion to be able to answer why things are certain ways, or why these actions occur, you have to fall back to science because that's the only structure of belief that exists for you to turn back on. And why is this a lot better off? What does this look like? This looks like people investing more into the sciences. This looks like people moving more towards and believing sciences rather than rejecting things like vaccines, rejecting things like the advances of science that exist within society today. So what does this look like? This looks like no more barriers for things like gene editing, no more barriers for things like cloning. This means individuals with genetic diseases are much more able to fight the genetic diseases, much more able to exist within the society that we have today. This is a lot better outcomes. This means a more advancement to medicine without any barriers that are brought about by religion, by the beliefs of individuals saying it's immoral, it's against what God intended, or all these things. We think you get more funding because people are more turning towards this for answers and people believe it more. But more than this, you remove the political barriers and all these things. What this all means is, firstly, principally, the scientists should release this information. But secondly, this is the only way you're able to get better outcomes, to remove the discrimination that exists in society today, and actually get an objectively better world. Proud to propose. Thank you.
For the BPM and closing the opening house, and the BPM will just be this.
So the moment you reveal the information, you destroy entire communities, have people live with a cognitive dissonance of the fact that everything that your life has been built on is a lie because there is no meaning to it all. Everything is randomness. And even if society manages to overcome this fundamental barrier, manages to pick up the pieces, you still have political groups that have the ability to be able to shape the harmful narratives that government has said. I don't think a comparative is like religion versus science, because science is not our source for moral truths. Our source for moral truths are stuff like politics, and we'll tell you why that's a terrible idea. The comparative we're defending is one, in the context of religious ambiguity. We'll say that religious ambiguity, the idea that our basic understanding of whether God or not exists and the nature of that God is ambiguous, is an excellent idea. So let's talk about psychology and cognitive dissonance first. So the fiat is that individuals who believe the evidence. I don't think this means that you wipe out the entire experiences that these people have had up to that point. So a person who lived their entire life based on Catholic theology or Islam theology would still have to deal with the fact that their entire world has now collapsed because they no longer know what exactly is true, because everything, every experience, every friendship, every single moral epithet that they've ever lived by is now shattered, shattering the core of these people's lives, driving a lot of people to suicide, the destruction of moral communities, which is the fundamental barrier that any government team has to be able to overcome in this debate. But since that's low-hanging fruit, I want to go beyond that. The question I want to ask is, how does religion evolve? Because the nature of government's arguments is predicated on them being able to argue that religion is a particular characteristic. And because religion is a particular characteristic, there are bad things about them. So let's look at the past of religion, the present of religion, and the future of religion. And I think this discussion is very important because insofar as we can prove to you that the future of religion is perfect for moral communities in a comparative, we think we're going to win this debate. In the past, religions are attempts to explain everything. They had monopolies of truth. And because individuals have limited information, we generally turn to and trust these religions. We told you that religions that have survived had three important characteristics. First, they had the ability to inspire fervor and strong emotion amongst their followers. Second, they had the ability to build strong communities. Thirdly, they had the ability to make others who feel left behind feel as if they are part of those moral communities. And I think there are two impacts here. The idea of the poor being left behind does not make sense. Even opening government contradicted themselves because they said the poor are being left behind by religion, but talked about zakat, which is a religious idea of making sure that marginalized communities are always brought to the fold. And secondly, in the present, the most important religions are those that have the strong moral impetus to be able to explain the basic truths of people's lives. That premise is going to be very important later on. How does religion move forward? So this is where I want to bring the debate to 2019 and not 1980s, where opening government wants to have this debate. There are three things. First, religion's monopoly over information and power dissolved to the extent that there's the internet and other sources of explanation. Individuals are exposed to a wide variety of information, and there are wider platforms by which multiple religious people are capable of expressing themselves. I think this means two things. First, religion transforms and has the incentive to shed away dogma that people don't necessarily accept and support because they understand that they will have less followers in a competitive set of religion when that dogma is very, very rigid and when that dogma no longer conforms with the modernity at the end of the day. This means that religion transforms from a very strict set of rules to a basic social message which tells you to be able to be good at the end of the day. Buddhism tells you to be good because of the principle of karma. Catholicism moved away from the very rigid Old Testament into a New Testament, which is based on the very simple moral fundamental principle of doing good to individuals. So the comparative here is under their side. We think when religion is out of the picture and it's sort of like just randomness, then the spiritual ambiguity that people have within themselves is removed in favor of just believing in randomness, and we think this is a very terrible idea. Secondly, I think there are very unique religious institutions and religious tools which we think are very important to having social order. Omniscience and omnipotence. For instance, the state does not have the ability to watch every single person at every time and ensure that moral order is prescribed. That's why our belief that a person is always watching us, that someone up there is watching my every move and is watching me experiment with, never mind, watching me do everything at the end of the day is what's stopping me from making very simple fundamental moral mistakes. We agree that sometimes this means that there's discrimination towards LGBT or towards minorities, but what we told you is that they are more likely to moderate away from those very strict dogmas into a very basic moral social message. Let's compare religion and politics. And this is where we'd say that many of the arguments from opening government also are against conservatism, which still would exist under their side. There are conservative arguments for the oppression of women, conservative arguments for saying that if you're poor, it's because you didn't work hard enough, which we think will still exist on the government side. The problem with politics is that, one, most of political discussions rather end in deadlocks, right? There's little to no commonality with regard to their basic fundamental core ideas. Whereas we think religion, as Sally told you, has an idea of being able to unite people and sort of bring people together. Sure.
So on the one hand, you claim that religion is meant to give people some sort of inherent meaning to their lives. Yet you also argue that religion is becoming increasingly ambiguous in what it teaches people and the principles that they have. How can these two things coexist?
Okay, if the judges are smart enough, they'll know that the POI does not really respond to the nuance of my argument. Let's move on. So, religion of randomness. We think that under government side, it's not as if religion would completely disappear, but to the extent that a God exists, people will now live their life according to the very basic core, fundamental idea by which that God exists, which is randomness, which we think is the most terrible idea at the end of the day. So, I think there's a natural human incentive or human tendency to be able to worship things. You see this in the cargo cults in the Pacific Islanders, for instance, when like planes came in and started worshiping those planes because they saw that as some divine message. The problem with tethering your idea or the meaning of your life to some sense of randomness is that it removes the very basic need of morality. The main argument for why morality is a good thing is because moral people get rewarded, and morality is a very important, logically binding force for most communities. But if everything is random, if good people, bad things sometimes happen to good people, and good things sometimes happen to bad people, then there is no incentive for self-interested individuals to be able to pursue that morality. Lastly, on science, I think opening government is underestimating how much the existence of a God obviates our need for many of the explanations for our basic things. Why would you pursue the truth for like stuff like entropy or basic quantum physics, for instance, when everything could be explained away by there is a God and God is very random and that's just the way the world is, my man? I think funding for very basic things like scientific ventures will be significantly less under the government side, but there's a very strong religious narrative against it. Under our side, with the scientific inquiry and ambiguity, we think there's still lots of incentive for people to be able to explore these basic truths and have many massive improvements in people's lives. We're extremely proud to take this debate.
Ada yang dapat ini rumah. Natural kalau ada. Jangan. Karena dinner time ini berarti.
Very good information. If that's okay with everyone, with the opening and closing half, we'll proceed swiftly as soon as the member of the host part.
We have water.
Break him up this one.
Thank you very much for the Deputy Leader of Opposition for the speech. Proceeding swiftly to the closing half, member of the
The reality is that you, me, and everyone else in this room are all just victims to an uncaring God that we are made to believe is an omnipotent. We are shackled to the religious doctrines that we read and study, surrendering whatever limited agency that we currently have, hoping that one day we will see the light. We will posit that the moment this information is provided to you as an individual, only then will the truth set us free. There are a couple of points of extension that we want to talk about within this debate. The first thing I want to talk about is why religion inherently limits the choices that you as an individual have. And I want to talk about why the socioeconomically disenfranchised groups of individuals requires the choice to be empowered. As opening government pointed out, religion is one that is unquestionable, that it is infallible and free from criticisms. There are three more lines of analysis that we want to add here. Religion often operates on a predeterministic framework that the suffering you face right now are one that is legitimate, and eventually God will provide you the salvation that you require. This means most individuals often surrender whatever limited agency and choice that they have, hoping that a solution will eventually accrue upon them. The second thing I therefore want to talk about is that the belief in the afterlife also means that you are willing to trade off the sacrifices and the sufferings that you have right now, hoping that one day you're eventually able to gain eternal enlightenment or eternal happiness. Meaning that you as an individual often believe the God, hoping that all your sufferings will eventually vanish. But what actually happens is that you're deceived into that religion, that you surrender the consent that you have as a person in making those informed choices in uplifting yourself. But the last thing is that religion is inherently limiting in the structures and hierarchies that it creates. So for example, religious doctrines that prevent you from drinking alcohol, from eating pork. These are things that individuals perhaps might seek great utility, great value from, and these are things that are inherently limited from them. But I think what's important here, right, is that the ability to gain happiness is a question with regards to what extent are we able to maximize the agency individuals have.
Right. So
with this in mind, I want to introduce an important framework in this debate, which is on principle, why is there a moral obligation for the scientists to share that information with everyone else in the world? Because there seems to be an absolute lack of discussion within the opening half. There's an important metric to evaluate this debate, because independent of the consequences, it's a question as to whether one individual deserves the right to monopolize a life-changing information that can potentially change the way that societies are fundamentally structured. So there are two things here. As a scientist, you are often in the pursuit of finding the truth, so as to allow not only scientific progress of individuals, but it's to benefit as many people on the ground. Opening opposition merely says opening government merely says that you have a duty to help the previous scientists who have contributed to this knowledge. What we suggest is that the way in which religious institutions currently work is that they lobby against scientific development and scientific progress that necessarily contradicts or fundamentally challenges the way religion works. So for example, when we're talking about stem cell research, this seeks to provide the most amount of utility for individuals by engineering new drugs and new curative treatments for people. These are treatments and scientific treatments that are necessarily hindered and stopped by the large religious forces that do not want them to operate. But the second thing I therefore want to talk about is when one individual does not possess the right to make a decision for everyone else. Because what we get from the status quo is that the way to which religious institutions work is that they construct a lot of consequences in the way individuals live their lives. So I just want to draw a very simple comparative here. Because at best, the lines of analysis coming up from the opening half is really speculative. So it might be true that we are able to free individuals in the world of opening government, and it might also be true that the dissolution of religion will make individuals deeply unhappy because of the cognitive dissonance that they face. So in a world where both sides are pretty speculative in whether those benefits can accrue, on principle, can an individual control or monopolize that information that may potentially change the way individuals work? So if I don't know what you as a person want, we would posit that each individual are in the best capacity to make use and utilize of that information in the way in which they live their life. I would suggest the ability to understand that information allows you to make fundamental choices that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to make in the world of opening opposition. But I would also suggest, and this nicely ties into the third part of my extension, I want to talk about why we better collectivize humanity as a whole against an uncaring God. The fundamental thing, or the first thing I want to establish within this debate, is that the multiplicity of gods and religions that exist often creates division all throughout the world. This means that the disputes that exist between religious institutions, broadly speaking, Christianity versus Islam, or even internally, when you have your growth of Wahhabism in the way in which religion is portrayed, means that organized religion is merely a politicized institution in the way in which they want to forward their own agenda. So I would suggest that maybe the breaking down of organized religion, because it has grown far too big, is perhaps a good thing. We would suggest that even if opening opposition was to say, or closing opposition was to say, that organized religion provides some fundamental basis to which individuals can collectivize, I think the premise to which that collectivization happens is one that's inherently harmful. But even the moderation opening opposition talks about in the way religious institutions are currently happening is really one where there's a max ceiling in the way in which we're able to moderate ourselves in appreciating the disenfranchised groups that exist. Hold on a minute. So for example, for a gay teen that cries himself to sleep every night because he cannot fundamentally reconcile two dualistic identities that he faces, what we allow for these individuals is to be able to break free and get that immense liberation that he otherwise wouldn't have had. Sure.
Doesn't your policy also limit the ability of individuals to pursue meaning and happiness under religious terms? Why does one scientist, under your terms, have the right to destroy Islam?
So what we would suggest is the comparative. So it's a question as to under which side does that limitation of choices by the organized religious institutions significantly worsens the ability for individuals to make choice. If all organized institutions necessarily dissolved in the world of government bench, I would suggest the capital control or the monopoly that you have over the lives of individuals significantly decreases. But I also would suggest that the building of stronger communities exists more under our side of closing government. So it's unclear to me whether the communities that you create that's premised on discrimination against other individuals by religious institutions in a way in which we exclude other people who are not part of us is a community that's worth protecting. I would suggest that as a society, we often, in absence of religion, find a way to rationally construct our communities and to find order within the chaos that we currently live in. We would suggest that humanity is greatly galvanized in the world of closing government, absent of religion, when individuals are unlikely to see the inherent religion that in individual practices as one that is a crucial defining moment for him. If you really want humanity to succeed, you have to go with closing government.
Thank you very much, Member of Government, for that speech. Continuing the debate by inviting the Member of Opposition. Please. Here.
you guys really necessary? Yeah? Alright, sweet. Alright, I'm gonna out loud where no one listened to what I said because I couldn't speak. Okay. The gist of CEO's extension is going to be fairly simple. We're going to imagine a world beyond God. What does that mean? Because the entire discussion of the opening house and even like the closing government has revolved around whether religion is or is not a good thing. But the problem with realizing that there is a random God out there who does whatever the fuck he wants is that it impacts all of us in general, not just those who are religious. It impacts the belief systems of those who are atheists, belief systems of those who are kind of religious, like I go to church every Sunday, but I don't really care all that much. It basically changes like everything about the way we live our lives. So that I think is a much larger impact that we want to talk about. Context, how the world works. Here's the thing, right? The first thing I want to point out is a bit of metaphysics, then I'm going to talk about perceptions of metaphysics. AKA, it's not merely that people perceive that everything in life is random as a result. It's also the possibility that maybe everything really is random, right? That natural disasters happen for no particular reason at all. That mental disorders happen for no particular reason at all. That maybe today, the cures to diseases like HIV will work based on an accepted set of like biological principles, but tomorrow, God may decide, well, fuck it, I'm going to change the laws of physics, and then boom, nothing happens, right? We don't know for sure when God is random and when God decides to let the laws of physics operate. Maybe the laws of physics have operated for the last 10,000 years, but you know, since God exists for a very long time, shit may happen tomorrow, and then, well, fuck me, all science is gone. Great. I think the larger implication is also about the perception of this, right, in the status quo. So, right now, we're not entirely sure about how the laws of physics work, but like we are at least committed to finding out how exactly they work, when they like whether there are variations in these laws under certain periods of time. But in our world, like we don't know when God is acting based on these laws of principles, laws of physics, and when God is being random. And for the average person, I'm going to have to assume that God is just fucking with us, and that there's no real laws of physics, that there are no accepted biological principles. There is nothing in our world that makes absolute sense. There is no sense of control whatsoever, regardless of whether I'm religious or not religious, or kind of religious, or Sunday school religious. And that means that the extension that I'm going to be talking about is very simple. It is about the loss of the will to act. The most important thing, I think, is that for the average person, we no longer feel in control. That individuals, as individuals, like we just, do you know how learned helplessness works, right, in society? Like, when poor people are told that no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to game the system. You're not ever going to be able to get into a good high school. You're not going to ever be able to break out of poverty, and therefore they learn to give up on their situation, remain poor, and remain miserable. No, thank you. Now, extended analysis to pretty much every individual in society. All the things that we have worked for in life suddenly make no sense because, you know, it's random. Like, I get a scholarship today, I don't get a scholarship tomorrow. You get a job today, you don't get a job tomorrow. You fight for gay rights today, suddenly there's a reversal and shit like everything goes to shit tomorrow. No, thank you. So as individuals, we no longer feel in control. And that not only obviously like in the scenario in which like, you know, there really is a random God and everything in life is random, destroys everything that we've worked for. But even if sometimes he chooses not to be random, for randomness' sake, you believe that it is random. And so you've learned to just give up on all the things that matter to you in life. And that is hugely detrimental to us. But this also extends to societies, right? Because when we no longer believe that any social project that we work for matters because we don't have a sense of control, then all sense of societal progress is lost. There is no need to fight for environmental welfare. There is no need to fight for the better treatment of minorities. There is no need to fight against climate change or to improve our GDP because we no longer perceive that we have any modicum of control over any of these things. And that's about the sense of control. The next thing I want to talk about is a sense of purpose, right? Because religion isn't the only thing that gives us purpose. Sure, like as Nietzsche said, God is dead and we've killed him, but we can still believe that there is purpose beyond God. But at the point in time in which you lose a sense of like control over any and all parts of your circumstances, what the fuck kind of purpose do I have left fight for. Right? It means
Point.
that we can give up on any modicum of like moral systems that we choose to construct for ourselves, or even if we set morality aside, any sense of communitarian belonging or loyalty that's worth fighting for. Because well, fuck it, like everything's arbitrary. The communities I was born into were arbitrary. My ability to help this community is also arbitrary, and therefore nothing in life truly matters. This is a destruction of everything human civilization and human life stands for. That is the problem that we are eventually going to face on closing opposition. What's the alternative? The alternative is imagining Sisyphus happy. We can't guarantee that the world isn't random all the time. But on the chance, and I guess because it's random, there's some chance, a decent chance in fact, that it isn't always random all the time, we believe that it is worthwhile to try and fight for these things. To believe that there are rules that govern this world that we can operate by, be it rules of economics, rules of international relations, balance of power, rules of like physics and biology and chemistry that allow us to govern our lives, or at least pretend we can govern our lives and try to fight for progress. And if God decides to fuck around with our world and blow up our world tomorrow, well fuck it, we lost. But at least let us give a chance to play this game for the next 1,000 years or so and allow us a fleeting moment of happiness and control over our lives and over our civilizations and gives ourselves a purpose. Opening.
Aren't people more likely to believe in science and fight for science if they don't believe that there's a God that has a plan for them or an intention to everything that he's doing? Isn't it more likely to look for patterns in the randomness if you know that you need to, rather than a God having done it?
Yes. So, Christian scientists, first rebuttal. Second rebuttal, and I think this is the more important one. Like, you are throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Sure, religion is often an impediment to science, but it is a partial impediment. Once I believe that quantum mechanics exists on not just the micro level, but the macro level, everything is fucking random. We're fucked, bro! Come on! Give me a chance! Let me play this fucking game! Dude, I don't play. For those of you who know, like, who play computer games, we have a term for gods like these. It's called RNGesus. I don't want to believe our world is controlled by RNGesus. Give us a fucking fighting chance, man. Alright, look. And therefore, I don't care about your moral obligations not to withhold knowledge that CG talks about. Because truth be told, like we've discovered chemical and biological weapons. We made the Manhattan Project. We've had vivisections. We might discover how artificial general intelligence works, only to have the bloody thing destroy us all. That is why there is no inherent moral obligation to share all our knowledge with the world, or even go on the path of particular types of scientific analysis. I think what matters is to give us a fighting chance. Vote for closing opposition.
Thank you very much for your opposition. And the last speaker from the government bench, Grandfinal.
Hello, testing. Okay? Yeah. I can hear you. Doesn't matter. Never mind the fact Ateneo, as usual, chooses entirely to ignore our speeches and not rebut it at all. I'm the perfect counter-example for all of the randomness that it talks about, leading to people being apathetic and not doing anything. And it is debating. Look, just because we know that calls can be entirely random, just because we know there is an activity that is subjective at its heart, and that oftentimes the effort that we put in will not amount to anything at the end of the day, we continue to try because at the end of the day, it is something that gives us pleasure, even in the moments in which we are giving our speeches, even in the moments that we are preparing for a competition. I think on their side, they really think very little about humanity, but they also underestimate the scale of what this knowledge truly means. I have a few responses to Adil with regard to why we don't think things will randomly change, and then I'm going to talk about why people won't think that things will randomly change. The first being, God, as a concept, is something that is omnipotent, has a lot more knowledge than us, and therefore, as a result, probably sees us as incredibly insignificant. The same way that we don't care about the lives of ants and don't bother to attempt to interfere in their society. Similarly, God probably doesn't care enough about us either to interfere in the ways in which the metaphysics of this world works, to change the way that society is structured and the way that physics is right now. Secondly, I would suggest that it is also true that given that things have been the same amount of time, and God is probably omnipotent and lives for infinity, then the amount of time that we are alive in this world is probably not going to be statistically significant enough for God to randomly change things. We should probably work on the probability that things are still going to be the same. But then Adeo's probably, or Subra, being more practical than Adeo, will probably come out and tell us, aha, no, it's about how people perceive the world and the way that things are. One, religion inherently assumes a random God, guys. Like, just because God gave you some things to care about, if you look at the Bible, God randomly decided to flood the earth. Like, literally, this is God you are talking about that was inherently random. The entire point of religion is that you don't understand God and what God's plan is for you. No, that you didn't remove the will of individuals to do anything. Secondly, people already know that when things get really big or really small, like, the laws just no longer apply. It's like random. That didn't mean that people decided, aha, today I shall walk around naked, or I shall just give up, lie on my couch and just not care about the rest of the world any longer. We assume that people know what happiness is, and people will attempt to still get that happiness because it's a value they can feel and a value that they know. Here is where our extension became really important, because no team in this debate actually understood the magnitude of the scale of what this information truly means for humanity. Because if it is true that we are alive for 80 years, and God is random and uncaring about suffering, the only thing that we know are the rules that exist for the life that we are currently alive, which is to say that the only time in which we can guarantee that we know of happiness, the fact is in the 80 years or so, 40 for me, if that we are alive. If that is the case, then this is probably the only time at which you could ever guarantee that you can gain something that is positive, which is to say happiness. If you are a scientist and you recognize this, we argue that there is no individual in the world with the moral legitimacy to make the decision for everyone else to hide that information from people. The reason for that is simple. One, we suggest that information is the premise by which any moral decision can ever be made. If individuals are laboring under a wrong set of moral beliefs, which is to say other religions that are not true, we suggest that this is your moral obligation to ensure that these individuals are set free from the different mode of contact and can act based on accurate information. No, thank you. Secondly, we suggest that it is important because you don't know what society is going to be like after this. You probably are a religious person. Even if you are a religious person, you're not a member of all religions. You can't epistemically access the minds of all of these other individuals. So as a result of that, that suggests that you don't have the ability to make decisions for these people. You should give them information instead in order to allow them to make those decisions themselves. They might say, or Loma suggests, that, well, there is equivalent that now you can no longer, or the right is taken away from you to label other happiness for religion. And here's some practical stuff, right? Firstly, there's no guarantee or you're unlikely to be able to pursue a vision of happiness under religion anyway. As we have told you, it is oftentimes religion that tells you that you ought to suck up your suffering in order to get happiness later on. Hierarchies of religion disallow you from being able to make most decisions on your own. So that freedom of choice and agency doesn't exist for you as an individual, but you make sacrifices every single day in the hope of happiness later. If you are that scientist, you are literally condemning billions of people around the world to sacrificing their only opportunity for genuine happiness by being able to make decisions that guarantee them some sort of happiness, whether it's physical comfort or emotional comfort. Otherwise, yes, Yoma.
In a world where religions become less coercive, which we prove, people can choose to live either religious or irreligious lives. Isn't that more agency than what you're providing under CG?
Bro, you didn't prove that religion is going to be less coercive, bro. On your side, you suggested that people look at religion for the meaning of life, and yet at the same time say that religion is just going to become a vague principle for individuals. Look, people don't just look at religion and go, that's the meaning of my life, right? Like, the reason why religion has rules in the first place is because people are worried about the afterlife, which therefore suggests they are worried about where they are going to go, which is what gives religion the power to dictate what the rules are for you to continue and get into that better afterlife. So therefore, as a result, religion will always have a fundamental premise that disallows individuals from being able to make the most free choices that they can have. But secondly, if you think about it, your analysis or trend analysis is wrong, because there's a reversion to fundamentalism for a lot of religions, to the extent to which individuals feel as if a religion that is overly ambiguous, that doesn't actually tell them anything about how to get to the afterlife, doesn't actually provide them meaning or solace in their life at all. Last thing I want to talk about, what exactly was the counterfactual we were willing to defend? We suggested that human beings are more than able to make rational calculuses that presume some level of non-randomness, and the reason for that is simple. One, we suggested that human beings being social creatures as a biological fact, are like to interact with one another. But secondly, there are so many atheistic accounts that are written about how society ought to be structured. Like the presumption here is that we think that human beings are not necessarily evil at heart, but can be altruistic as well, if not just because there is the ability to empathize with one another from being from the same community, then because it is necessary for society to be able to survive. But the last thing I would suggest is this, that to the extent to which humanity has always been ins and outs, which is to say, fighting between religions, for example, who is in and out of the religion, who is in and out of ethnicity, and etc., it's always because they want to unite against some other force. In this case, the great evil of the world is the randomness of an uncaring God, in which case we think humanity is far more likely to be able to collectivize in a manner in which they're able to maximize the only thing that they have, which is happiness. We suggest that that's good, but even if that wasn't true, we don't think you should be allowed to hide this information from individuals. We are happy to propose.
Thank you very much for the government whip. And for the last speaker from opposition again, and to conclude the debate as a whole.
I know my partner is prone to jumping off the deep end. I didn't know Sherwin would jump in right with him. But even ignoring that, I'll jump into the rabbit hole as well. Okay, let me first respond to a couple of parts of the last parts of Sherwin's speech. Right? Before there are a few jokes about debating analogies, right? Sherwin cannot believe that debating is random because, like, if that's the case, like, she wouldn't be, all her previous accomplishments would have like made no sense, or all those were elements of randomness. If she's willing to say that, I don't think she necessarily want to live in a world where her accomplishments were random. Sherwin is not also likely to believe that debate is not random because she has actually learned to game the system of debating, which is why that's likely to be true. But let me get on to the serious stuff, right? She tells us that religion, like, randomness is a good thing because, like, that allows you more access to choices, and that collectivized religion is somehow bad. We don't think this is really true. We think the reason why, like, certain parts of collectivized religion can be good is because things such as scriptures and religious leaders allows people to structure their lives through various forms of moral compasses. Notice that the comparative on our world is not that a singular religion exists, as Adol tells you, but multiple religions exist. This also therefore implies that individuals have different levels of different types of moral compasses that they can choose from. Why is this important? This is important for individuals because in terms of moral structuring, right, or in terms of individuals finding meaning to the choices that they do, we think it's far better to live in a world where you can choose with different kinds of moral compasses that allows you maximal amounts of freedom. The reason why this is also important is because even in that worst case, right, where you believe in a religion but you feel that your life is not worth living, there are certain ways in which, or certain specific actions you can do in order to make yourself happier that religion teaches you. For example, if you feel sad or you feel that you are a bad person, religion tells you that you can do good in order to, like, receive good things, right? Elements of karma, for example, elements of giving to the poor, for example. These are all ways which enable individuals, even those who are dissatisfied, to find some satisfaction. The reason why some people, for example, like, pray even after, especially when they are sad, particularly is because it gives them some sense of comfort and closure that someone up there is watching, even if that idea is an illusion at the end of the day. The worst case scenario on outside the house and the bullet that we're willing to bite is that we are fine if people are living under the illusion that their choices have consequences. It's fine if people are living under the illusion that God is out there watching them, because I think that is far preferable compared to a world where everything seems random, where you can't necessarily dictate whether your life is worth living or not, right? That's why I think the idea of choice is far greater on outside of the house as opposed to their side of the house. I think at the worst case, right, you find happiness easier to pursue because there are arbitrary markers that religion and atheism gives you that allows you to pursue those levels of happiness. Therefore, I think the best case of CG is that, one, for example, we acknowledge that, like, some people on outside the house acknowledge that laws and patterns exist and people are able to abide by those things. Secondly, people on outside the house are also able to believe that some parts of the world are random, but people believe that other parts of, like, life are things that they can control. On their side of the house, people are likely to believe that everything that I do is random and may never be the same tomorrow again. That's why Adol's extension is extremely important, because it leads to individuals being less willing to leave legacies behind because they feel like nothing that they do in this life is necessarily meaningful because due to the element of randomness, my choices may never realize themselves. So people care less about the state of the world in general, and people become less dissatisfied with their lot in life because they believe that there's not many things that they can do. The second thing I want to necessarily talk about is ideas of moral obligation, right? Here's where I respond to some stuff from closing and opening. Let me respond to the moral consequences of the scientist, right? We think that it's far better for the scientist to not reveal this information because the consequences are far beyond his imagination, right? Here's where I respond to the science argument. I think science itself suffers, as Adil explains to you, because there's a distinct lack of impetus to research. The reason why this is likely to be true is at the point in time where individuals believe, or the world sort of believe, that everything is random. The reality is that scientific research also is influenced by that randomness, which implies that even if I find a cure for cancer today, it may not be the same tomorrow, or that due to randomness, multiple diseases may spring up at different points in time. So outside the house, at the worst case, we think there's a constant challenge between science and religion that exists. This arguably maximizes the choices of individuals because you open yourself up to different kinds of ideas and structures. At least outside the house, scientists as well as religious individuals can compete together to identify which sorts of things they want to believe or not want to believe in. The moment you believe that metaphysics is random, the moment you believe that every aspect of life is random, there's less impetus for scientists to argue or research on certain things because they believe that those things are inherently meaningless. No thank you. Why is this important? This is important because based on our extension, individuals feel that there's a loss of control and a will to act. This means it creates individuals who feel that their actions do not matter. This leads to individuals pursuing paths of nihilism, or feeling that nothing that I do is important in this world. So they are less likely to have people like Martin Luther King to care for environmental causes in the future, because what you do today will be erased tomorrow. The third reason why this is important is because people build lives and social infrastructures based on the idea of leaving behind a legacy. We think this legacy, or the idea that your choices have consequences and your choices matter, is important for a lot of individuals to find meaning and happiness, because I think that's at the point in time where they feel like they can do some good in the world. That's at the point in time when people pursue social good or people pursue certain things because they believe that I'm able to actively impact the lives of myself and the people around me. That's why we think living in a world without this sort of revelation of information is far more preferable. Opening.
If there's randomness in the world and people feel bad because of the randomness, then they try to look for patterns in the randomness, right? That's exactly why people will turn to science. Because science actually has facts to back up the patterns that it's talking about. They show that there's patterns in the randomness and storms.
No, I don't think this is likely to be true, because one, you never prove that that's likely, and I think the more likely outcome is that if people live in a world of randomness, people are not really sure as to what is necessarily certain in that world, and I think the uncertainty is what kills the individuals. Next, let me move on to the last point about oppression and choice. Here's where I respond to final bits of analysis from both government benches, right? I think oppression on their side of the house is worse because A, people in high structures of power are able to justify oppression by claiming that, for example, poor people are poor because of a God who acts in a random capacity, and it is your unlucky lot in life that you are poor. I think the problematic aspect of oppression is that oppression becomes far more likely in a world of randomness because people can always justify your poorness or justify oppression by saying that this is not due to my choice, this is due to the asshole God who lives above, and therefore I think life becomes worse on their side of the house. The comparative is that in a world with varying spectrums of religion, there is a greater agency that gives individuals an out. So this means that even if, for example, you are born to a family who follows Islam and you feel that Islam is inherently oppressive, at least on outside the house, you can move out of that structure and follow something else like Christianity, because different moral conceptions exist on outside the house. The moment that is all erased, right, the moment those kind of structures are erased, it's less likely for you to feel that you at least have an out, even if you don't believe in religion or you feel that certain parts of your life are unhappy. I think that is when individuals become more dissatisfied with their lot in life. I think that's why people feel that they're more oppressed and they feel that their choices don't matter. For the sake of agency and for the sake of individuals feeling that their lives do matter in this world that they live in for the 80 years that they have, I'm very, very proud to oppose.